Chapter 10 Cloakwood Part 1. Late the next morning, Twilight and her friends sat across from a regal, ruby-colored unicorn at a table in one of the Helping Hoof's rooms. A cloak of expensive furs draped across his broad shoulders accompanied his sculpted golden mane. His face was uncannily perfect, and the only blemish Twilight could see on his toned body was a small scar in the center of his chest, directly to the left of his sternum. On the whole, she might have found him attractive, if it weren't for the way he looked disdainfully down at every pony with his nose in the air. A small group of attendants hovered around him on his side of the table. "Now that all of the important parties have representation, we can begin," one of them said, inclining his head first to Bonbon sitting at the end of the table, then to Applejack. Twilight glanced at the innkeeper. Bonbon practically hovered over her chair, her hooves poised nervously on the edge of the table. Lyra sat beside her, calmer, but watching Bonbon with worry. "Let it be stated for the record that Granny Smith's representative delayed me here at this inn for a whole day," the noble said while wiping some dust off one of his manicured forehooves. Yes, Lord Ruby," a unicorn scribe beside him said, and set his quill to a long blank scroll that spilled off the end of the table. "Let it be stated that I arrived as soon as can be expected given the late hour of the message," Applejack said, her voice low and angry. When the scribe stopped writing and stared blankly at Applejack, Lord Ruby chuckled. "You seem to forget who's paying my scribe, Miss Applejack."
"I should have seen this coming,"
Rarity whispered to Twilight.
"We need to play his game."
"Spike, take a record,"
Twilight said. Spike produced a sheet of paper and a quill with a burst of green dragon fire. "On it!" He immediately began to write. Twilight glimpsed a momentary flash of anger in Lord Ruby's eyes. But when he spoke, his tone was as calm and mocking as ever. "It appears your pet can scribble. Fascinating." Twilight furrowed her brows, his words digging under her skin. Her swords were right outside the negotiating room with the other weapons. She could have them in a moment. She doubted he would be insulting anyone when he had Solstice's razor-sharp edge shoved up one of his nostrils.
"No, that's not the solution here,"
she told herself, suppressing her violent urge. Twilight glanced back at where Spike was writing beside her. He appeared to be focused on his task and doing better than she was at ignoring Lord Ruby's words. "Something the matter?" the Lord asked. It took Twilight a moment to realize he was addressing her.
"Nothing,"
she growled. "You don't have much poise for a unicorn, unlike your friend," he said, turning to Rarity. "You seem familiar. Rarity, isn't it? We met a few years ago when I was on a diplomatic trip to Canterlot."
"You have a good memory,"
Rarity said. "Oh, I could never forget the name that goes with such a beautiful mare," he said as he gazed at Rarity. "I never did see you again after our date. I thought it went swimmingly." Spike broke his quill, spilling a blotch of black ink all over his scroll.
"Oh? I seem to remember you failing to pay the waiter and the night ending in disaster,"
Rarity said. "I never did find my coin purse," Lord Ruby mused.
"That's too bad,"
Rarity said, and Twilight caught the corner of Rarity's mouth rising into his smirk.
Can we get to the point already?"
Rainbow interjected. "Pegasi, never patient." Lord Ruby shook his head in disappointment. "Very well. The point is that I'll be Baron of Ponyville in 2 weeks. In 3 weeks, I'll be back to discuss the taxes that need to be paid to fund my campaign against the bandits. Retroactively for the past year, of course. Additionally, I'll need some land to construct a new manor in Ponyville. I can't exactly govern without a residence, after all. He smirked at Applejack. I hear there's a nice hill where you can see the emerald expanse of the Everfree Forest that would be a perfect spot. Applejack glared at Lord Ruby.
Your title ain't confirmed yet, and it never will be.
Lord Ruby laughed darkly. You're mistaken, Applejack. The Duchesses are very supportive of me. I have full confidence that they will make the right decision. It's inevitable. I was required to inform Granny Smith that I will be her new Baron. He dipped his head almost imperceptibly. Consider her informed.
What do you want with our town? Applejack asked. We never did anything to you.
Oh, you mean besides money and power? He leaned forward, setting his hooves on the table. I enjoy taking things away from creatures who try to rise above their station.
By the time the Duchesses meet, there won't be a Cloakwood Gang,
Twilight said. Oh? Really? And what are you going to do, Find their lair and kill them all with your 6-mare band? In less than 2 weeks? He scoffed.
Yes,
Twilight said. I think you'll find you're biting off more than you can chew. It might make you into a mouthful, Lord Ruby said with a smirk. The Cloakwood Gang has only been located once. A single flaming wing Pegasus came back from a mission that actually managed to find their hideout. Somehow, she escaped. Or perhaps they let her go as a warning. Either way, she had been tortured, and all any pony could get out of her was something about beasts of fire. He stood up from the table. We're done here. He strode toward the door. He paused in the doorway, his servant scrambling to catch up, and fixed his gaze on Bonbon. 3 weeks, and I expect my fortress to be cleared out for my garrison. He was gone a moment later.
I can be very patient,
Fluttershy mumbled.
This place, it's everything to me. Where will the guests go?
Bonbon said, sinking into her seat.
Hey, chin up. We asked Granny Smith for help, and she sent some,
Lyra said. Pinky smiled.
That's right. Don't you worry. We'll fix this,
Applejack said. Twilight smiled at the grateful look in Bonbon's eyes.
We will,
she said.
And something about him was off,
she added, looking out the door.
I know what you mean. A pony as loaded as him shouldn't be safe on the coast road without at least 20 armed guards. And he only has a dozen,
Applejack said.
He seems familiar somehow. Was there anything in the stuff we found about a Lord Ruby?
No, but there's supposed to be a noble connected to the Iron Circle who's overseeing the bandits,
Twilight said.
I reckon it's him,
Applejack said.
He is crafty, I'll give him that,
Rarity said.
If he's actually going to get rid of the Cloakwood Gang, he's playing both sides. We shouldn't underestimate him.
Twilight nodded.
I'll keep that in mind. But either way, he's going down. We'll use the mirror to send a message to the Cloakwood Gang. They'll take us right to them. We'll blend in and take out their leadership when we have the right opportunity.
That evening, they ventured off the coast road and into the depths of the Cloakwood. Twilight's mind thrummed with magical power as she walked beneath Cloakwood's canopy. She had prepared a slew of high-level spells, some of which she had only seen Star Swirl cast once. This time, She had pushed herself to her limits when she had readied her magic, and she almost failed with some of the harder spells. Additionally, she was using Solstice as a sequencer that held completed spells, rather than using it to ease the burden on her mind. This time, she was confident she was using every tool at her disposal. With all of the power she held, she hoped she wouldn't fail again. Twilight led her party through the forest toward a clearing where they were supposed to meet the Cloakwood Gang. She stopped short when a web of thick spider silk blocked their path. She glanced down, checking the directions they'd received through the mirror.
Whoops,
she said. Wrong turn? Applejack asked.
Yes, well, unless this is recent.
Twilight peered at one of the fibers.
What'd make a web this thick anyway?
Rainbow pointed at the trees above them.
There's your answer.
Twilight looked up. A giant spider, twice as big as she was, lurked in the branches. It stared at her with 8 dull eyes, waiting to pounce.
We should probably go around,
Twilight said. Later, while they were sitting around a campfire eating supper, finally in the right spot, she heard a voice.
Raven,
Someone called from the edge of the clearing.
Feather,
Twilight answered with the countersign. Twilight and her friends rose wearily with their weapons ready as 4 armed figures in black cloaks creeped out of the undergrowth, surrounding them.
Ah, so you're the new recruits.
A griffin wearing wing blades and holding a crossbow said. She tossed back her hood, revealing her white feathered head.
At least you look more capable than the last bunch. Except for you.
She eyed Fluttershy with disdain. Fluttershy looked absolutely terrified. Trembling next to Rainbow Dash, she whispered something, and the blue Pegasus extended a wing protectively around her. Angel glared at the griffin venomously from Fluttershy's mane.
We work as a team,
Twilight said.
Gotcha. Thieves with honor.
The griffin nodded. She approached Twilight, extending a claw in greeting.
Name's Gilda. I'll take you to see the boss.
Twilight extended her hoof and accepted the shake.
Midnight Shine,
she said. Rarity had modified Twilight's mark with dye, just in case.
Wait a second,
Gilda said, staring at Rainbow.
I'd know that mane anywhere.
Twilight laced her magic around her swords. Gilda laughed.
You turned to a life of crime? I didn't think you had it in you. Wow.
She looked at Fluttershy again.
And you brought your little friend. How'd you get free? You made her into a slave,
Rainbow said, glaring.
Rainbow, remember why we're here?
Twilight said quietly as she relaxed her guard.
Yeah, to join up,
Gilda snickered.
Leave your problems at the door, Junior Speedster and Cloud Destroyer Extraordinaire.
Rainbow lunged forward with her wings flared.
You wanna fight? I'll give you a fight! Rainbow!
Twilight shouted.
Hey, Dash, I was just kidding. Can't you take a joke? We're on the same team now.
Gilda turned back toward the forest.
Now come on, I'll show you groundwalkers the way. No spider webs, I promise. That wasn't a funny joke,
Pinky said.
Come on, Gilda. Don't you want to know what happened to the rubber chicken?
Pinky said. Twilight groaned inwardly. Pinky had been incessantly telling nonsensical jokes to Gilda for the entire duration of the trip to the bandits' camp, probably to get on the griffin's nerves. It had amused Twilight at first, but now it only irritated her.
If I told you that we were there, would you shut up?
Gilda said, apparently sharing Twilight's sentiment.
Maybe.
Pinky said.
Then we're here,
Gilda said.
Where?
Pinky asked.
All I see are trees.
She blew a raspberry at one of the trees.
Ominous, scary-looking trees. Oh!
She pointed between the trunks.
Ruins!
Twilight peered through the trees. In the dim light of dusk, she couldn't make out whatever Pinky was pointing at. After following Gilda for a few more steps, she made out a faint, fiery glow. A little further, and she emerged from the trees. An overgrown stone amphitheater formed a depression in the ground in front of her. Stumps marked where a few stubborn trees had cracked the masonry with their roots, only to be cut down.
1,000 ponies must have sat here. Once.
Twilight thought. Beyond the amphitheater, Twilight saw a massive stone structure coated in vegetation looming above them. Crumbling ruins spread out from the base and spilled around the amphitheater. The faint shapes of ponies and other creatures lurked among the ruins, probably the bandits of the Cloakwood Gang. She spotted the glow of a few fires, but the flames themselves were hidden within the structures around the theater or in hollows where the stepped seating used to be. A rugged wooden structure stood on the flat stone covering the central stage of the theater. The wall facing them was open, and inside, she saw a blue-furred minotaur seated on a stone throne, illuminated by a pair of blazing torches mounted beside him. Crates and chests were piled behind him. Gilda led them toward the minotaur. As they descended the cracked steps, Twilight had the uneasy sense of being watched, and she noticed small groups of bandits gathering on the edge of the ring. As they approached, the minotaur shifted a stocky shortbow out of his lap and stood. With a smile on his face, he spread his arms wide. "So, you're the new recruits. Welcome," he said. Twilight nodded respectfully.
I'm told you're in charge.
"I'm the boss, and as far as you're concerned, I am in charge. I talk to the big guy."
The big guy?
Twilight asked. "Oh, you don't want to meet him. If you did, you'd be dead," the Minotaur chuckled. "If you thought you looked tasty, anyway."
Boss is a funny name,
Pinky said. The Minotaur chuckled again. "The name's Iron Will, and welcome to our little slice of paradise. If you've come here, you're tired of playing by some pony else's rules, being pushed around, and being thrown in prison. Here, you'll get 3 square meals a day. You'll get paid regardless of if you take in loot or not. I'll give you the opportunity to be a winner, instead of flattened beneath society's hoof." While he spoke, Rarity whispered in Twilight's ear.
I don't like this.
She glanced up at the amphitheater around them. Twilight followed her gaze. At least 50 ponies, griffins, and minotaurs were watching, armed with bows, crossbows, slings, and javelins. 3 ogres stood at the top of the steps behind them. "The big guy has 3 rules, though," Ironwheel said. "They're really simple. I'm sure they won't get in the way of your fun. Rule 1, no fighting with other gang members on a whim. If you want to schedule a throwdown, you can throw down, but I can't have scuffs and murders happening anywhere, anytime. Rule number 2, our job is to make the coast road impassable. I don't care if you kill, maim, or torture. What you bring back comes to me. You get a 10% cut in addition to your salary. If you try and cheat me and hide loot, I will kill you." Twilight wearily glanced around. She caught Gilda slowly slinking away from them. There were at least 100 ponies assembled now. Actually, I lied. Those are the only 2 rules. But I have one special rule that applies just to you, Midnight Shine. Or should I say, Twilight Sparkle?
Twilight's eyes widened, and she took a step back.
Sorry, Dash. Business is business,
Gilda said, and spread her wings, flapping away to join the ranks formed on the seating of the amphitheater around them. Iron Will picked up his bow.
What? You didn't think the Iron Circle wouldn't let me know that a certain mirror was compromised, did you? Iron Will is no fool. Your little message wasn't all that subtle. And I am not afraid.
Oh no.
Twilight thought.
Twilight, what did you do?
Rarity asked.
Well, she made this easy for me, it's what she did.
Iron Will said as he methodically picked up his bow.
Girls, close your eyes when I raise my sword.
Twilight whispered while Iron Will spoke. The Minotaur knocked an arrow.
My special rule for you is this. Don't kill my kin. Rumor has it that my brother went after you and didn't come back.
What are you planning, Twilight? Applejack asked quietly.
5,000 is an added bonus,
Iron Will said.
Just trust me,
Twilight whispered. Iron Will raised his bow, shouting,
Twilight is mine!
Twilight drew Celestial Fury. Before Iron Will had even begun to draw back the bow's string, she pointed the blade toward the sky and closed her eyes tight.
please work.
A painfully bright flash of sunlight lanced through her eyelids. After she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the tip of Iron Will's arrow, the bow drawn by his coiled arm. Tears glistened in his squinting eyes, reflecting the fading glow of her sword. As Iron Will's arrow jumped from the string, Twilight triggered the sequencer in Solstice. A lavender shield lit when the arrow struck it, shattering the missile. But the sheer strength of Iron Will's bow allowed the forward fragment to cut a hole through the shield and spin beyond it. It hit her sideways, and the piece of the wooden shaft still attached to the arrowhead drew a stripe of pain across her chest through her mage armor. While Twilight watched the broken arrow fall, Applejack's chain punched through the air. Twilight flicked her eyes back up and saw the spike impaled precisely between Iron Will's eyes. With the immediate threat eliminated, the world around her returned to focus. They had a few seconds at best before the bandits around them recovered, and a volley of slung, launched, and thrown missiles shattered the center of the theater. Her sequencer had included a mirror image spell, but it would do little to protect her from the sheer volume of fire, and that said nothing for her friends. Past the wooden structure in the center of the ring, she made out an entrance into the ruins.
We'll lose them in there,
she shouted and sprinted for it. Mist rose up around her hooves, and she glanced over her shoulder. The rest of the group followed her, but Fluttershy lingered behind them, her eyes glowing, Angel shielding her from the inevitable volley of fire. Twilight stopped immediately. The rest of the group blazed past her, unaware.
Fluttershy, there's no time!
Twilight yelled.
I'm making time!
Fluttershy answered. As the words left Fluttershy's mouth, a wall of thick fog blocked Twilight's view. Projectiles riddled the amphitheater stage, wispy lines of turbulence lingering behind them as they streaked through the white mist. The stones around her clattered with the sound of metal. 3 of her images shattered. Missiles bruised her through her cloak and her armor, but mercifully none penetrated. Through the mist, from Fluttershy's position, she heard the thunk of arrows striking wood, and one fleshy impact. Fluttershy's cry of pain filled Twilight's ears, and she lifted her hoof to run back to help her.
I've got her! Get out of here!
Rainbow shouted as she shot past Twilight in the air. Nodding, Twilight swallowed, made her best guess at the direction to the entrance to the ruins, and galloped into the mist. She joined the three others in a crumbling stone corridor, the white fog whispering at the door. She noted with relief that they were unharmed. Confused shouting followed her from outside.
Where are they?
I can't make them out!
Did we get them? Where are you?
She recognized the last voice.
Rainbow Dash!
She realized. She opened her mouth to call back, but before she could gather the air in her lungs, Rarity held a hoof to her mouth.
Shh!
Rarity hissed.
I'll show them the way.
Rarity closed her eyes, and a series of dancing lights jumped from her horn, forming a line trailing into the mist. They waited in silence for a few tense moments. When Rainbow emerged from the mist with Fluttershy draped across her back and a foreleg looped around a small angel, Twilight let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding.
Moving through that stuff is like swimming. She's pretty bad,
Rainbow said, panting. Twilight's relief was short-lived. When Rainbow lowered Fluttershy to the stone floor, Twilight saw a bolt sticking out from between the yellow Pegasus's ribs. Fluttershy whimpered with each shallow breath she took. Angel snuggled up to her face, worry in his small animal eyes.
I'm sorry.
Fluttershy murmured, nuzzling her bunny. Rarity approached.
Darling, if I pull this out, will you be able to heal yourself?
Fluttershy closed her eyes and nodded. Twilight could see the pain on Fluttershy's face as Rarity carefully extracted the bolt. The head suddenly jumped free, and Fluttershy's eyes shot open, a gasp escaping her lips. When her eyes slid closed again, her chest seized. Fluttershy stopped breathing.